everyone, welcome to the skills session on keys to producing success. As always, we are recording, so if you'd like not to be on the video, feel free to turn off your own video. But tonight we will be hearing from Brian McLaughlin as he teaches us about keys to producing success. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to him.
Thank you, Caitlin, and Sydney, who recruited me for this, and everyone in, I don't know if you say T or if you say TEA, but thank you to all of you. I'm going to, I prepared a few words, maybe a half hour-ish, and then I think as we discussed, then I'll open it for questions, but if anyone has questions on the way, feel free to interrupt, or maybe somebody is moderating and can keep track of you at the end. But I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Everything good there? Thumbs up from anyone? Okay. So I slightly changed the title because producing success could have been misinterpreted as producing being the verb instead of the noun or gerund. You'll see that I have some photos throughout. If anybody has any questions or comments on the photos, feel free to ask later or in the middle, whatever. And but I'm not going to really talk about the photos. They're just to make it a little more visually interesting, I think. Let's see. Interesting. One little thing I will point out about the photos, though, is there's only one picture of me on set, and that's kind of indicative of how much there is to do as a producer that doesn't even involve being on set. So anyway, I will move along, and even though I'm a film and TV producer, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about applies to themed entertainment and entrepreneurship in general. So. Or entertainment in general. So hopefully everyone will find this valuable. So a little bit of, in case you haven't read my background, and I'll keep it brief for those who have. I've been a producer of feature films since 2005. I've produced 4 feature films, all of which were bought by distributors. I'm a member of the Producers Guild of America, which is the organization for film and TV producers. I was a visiting professor in the Film, Television, Theater Department of Notre Dame in 2011 to 2012, which Notre Dame is my alma mater also. And I was a media production advisor to General Petraeus, whom you see there in the corner, in Afghanistan for 6 months. I was an Army major, which is why I was picking on Allison a few minutes ago. I also have an MBA, and a little bit about that is that I was 19 years in corporate finance before becoming a film producer, which is a little bit relevant because, as you'll see, I think on the next slide, the film producers or the producers of TV and film are also handle the business side of the project. So that's the MBA came in very handy, and also the 20 years almost of business background. And I have a son named Colin. So just in case, like everyone, you don't know what a producer does, I'll talk to you a little bit about it. Basically, they're the CEO or the project manager for the entire film or television show. They come up with the idea and then have overall responsibility all the way through. Years after other people have left the project, years after it's been produced and released, the producer still has responsibility for distributing the revenue, for example. We handle the business side, so the funding, the budgets, contracts, all that stuff, plus much of the creative, and that includes the casting of maybe all the cast, but for sure the 1 or 2 main actors, and also hiring the director and hiring other key creative people. Each producer typically has half a dozen to a dozen projects going on at once, and if you're a really big producer, you could have 50 projects in development. I say going on at once, and I'm talking about from the initial idea, the script getting written, all that, until shooting and getting it released. And because you never really know which project is going to hit first in terms of getting funded, so that's why you have to have many going on at once, and you can't just do one and then start the next one from scratch, or you'll be 7 years without any income, so or longer, whatever. It's our job to create the opportunity. Nobody gets hired on a film without the producer starting the project from scratch. So we also, another big part of the job is relationships, and that involves networking, but also just interpersonal relationships on the shoots or with the director or whatever it happens to be. And relationships, it's a very relationship driven industry and business. Not that others aren't, but this one, to me, is much more relationship driven. And a big thing about a producer is, whether it's during production or it's in the funding or dealing with talent, is you have to be a problem solver. If you want everything in your job to go smoothly, then don't be a producer because every day there'll be something new, and that makes it exciting and interesting and kind of fun. So, and that's just a few things. There, another countless number of tasks that the producer either oversees or has direct responsibility for. And I'm not going to go through these, but you do notice maybe that the shoot is only one part of it. It's all these other things happen before or after the shoot. And the bottom left corner you see is very financially driven. So there's a lot of that going on in the producer's life. So now the subject matter here are keys to successful producing. And so I'm going to go over 6 of them that I think are the most important as I've encountered throughout my career. So first one is perseverance. And I list that one first because it really is ever present in being a producer. It's a very demanding job and goes on a lot. It's a very much a long-term job. But the good news is that you decide if you'll succeed. And what I mean by that is, as long as you stick with it, you will succeed in the industry. And that can be as a writer, or as a director, as an actor, same thing. But just staying with it. Anyone who stays with it gets to a point. If you have any level of competence, intelligence, talent, you will, in time, you'll be able to support yourself and live very comfortably in this industry, and particularly as a producer. And a producer, it's very much feast or famine. You'll get a film funded, and that's a lot of money at once. And then you may go several years without another film getting funded. But there are other sources of income along the way, and hopefully there's residual income from that first film. So just making the decision you can stick with it is the biggest thing. My first few months as a full-time producer, I met with a mentor of mine. His name was Jerry York, and he was one of the biggest financial financial icons in the industry. In any industry. Actually, he was more of an automotive and tech guy, even though he was also in the film industry. And one thing he said to me is that perseverance is the biggest thing in this business. And he said to me, "I know you'll make it because you have that drive to stick with it." And we didn't know each other that well. So looking back, I thought, did he just say that to me to motivate me? Or did he really see something in me that made him think that I had that drive? And, that was 15 years ago. So I hope it was the latter. Not that the first, not that the former was a bad thing either. You have to have a lot of risk tolerance, because unlike having a corporate job, for example, being a producer, it's not a certain thing. You don't know if your film will get funded. You don't know if when you make a film it will succeed. Despite everything you do right along the way. The week before a film opens, some bad news about the lead actor can come out, or it could just not hit. With audiences. So there's a lot of risk involved. But then again, probably not any more risk than any other business, any other entrepreneurial business. Open a shoe store, it's going to be risky too, and probably not as much fun as making films. So nothing against shoe salesmen if that's what any of you want to do. The good news is you only need one yes, and that is a little bit of an overstatement, because you need one yes on funding, you need one yes on the director, you need one yes on the lead actor and distributor. So you need a few yeses, but really it'll seem like you only need one because each of those comes at a different time, and you will be asking a lot of people for yes. And as soon as you get one of them, it's wonderful. And don't be discouraged if somebody says no, because that really just means that they're not a fit for your project. It doesn't mean it's not a good project. It doesn't mean you're not good. It just means it's not right for them. So move on to the next person, and don't get bothered by that one. And also no can mean just not now. And coincidentally, I think it was yesterday, it was the day before, I had an event, a meeting with a bunch of people from, there's a roundtable kind of thing with a bunch of people from executives from Amazon. And we had pitched a couple films, I think 3 films to Amazon a year and a half ago. And, it was great to have the pitch meeting, very encouraging. The guy loved our ideas. And then he passed on them. And so I thought, oh man, too bad, Amazon would have been great. But the good news was, in this meeting with these executives, they said, one of us says no, that's just a matter of their taste. Come to another one of us and pitch. And so it was great news that I can now go back to Amazon, go to a different executive and pitch the same project. And they also said that Amazon's needs and taste change over time. So it can just mean go back in a couple of years to them. So that was very encouraging information, because I had heard, just the opposite, that you can only go one time with one project to a particular company. People often ask, knowing what you know now, what would you tell us that we can get to where you are quickly? And my answer is that you don't want to get there quickly. You don't want shortcuts, because every step of the way you learn more. Every year that you're in the industry, you learn more things, you meet more people. If you got to, like, if I got to be 8 years ago when I came to LA, if I had gotten the vice president's job, I'm not saying I wouldn't have done well at it, but I would do better now. And so, because over time I've learned more. I've met so many more people that would help me be successful in that position. So same thing with a film. Maybe 10, 12 years ago, to get a $5 million film funded would possibly not have worked out so well as it will now. So just it hurts to have to wait, but waiting will only improve the outcome. The next key is a winning attitude, a winner's attitude. That biggest thing is positivity. It's you want to be just always optimistic. You're going to be surrounded in the arts in general and entrepreneurship too by optimistic people. And so if you're a cynical type of person, it's probably not going to be a good fit. So you have to be very positive. You have to always, personality-wise, being cheerful and just friendly, it helps a lot. One of my good friends is a screenwriter in LA, and he's been here for 40 years, and he just really has never gotten up off the bottom level. And I think it's because he's a cynical person. And as much as I think he's a great guy, it's not the kind of thing that is going to promote his success in the industry. So I can't tell him that really, but it's just what I observe and what I assume. One thing about positive attitude is just choosing the right words. I mean, we hear people say all the time, of course it started raining, or of course I couldn't get a parking spot, or whatever it happens to be, or of course traffic was bad today. All that stuff is like negative reinforcement. If instead you just change your of courses to, and of course I won, and of course I ran into Sandra Bullock at the store, or whatever it happens to be, change that whole expectation, and you'll find that things go better. And every day, celebrate what the good, even the little things that have happened during the day, and you'll find that there are more and more things to celebrate over time. And one other thing about this industry that I'm working on a TV show today. I pointed that direction because it's shooting out there right now, and people applaud, at the end of things. And if you're working at a shoe store, nobody applauds when you sell a pair of shoes, or at Taco Bell, they don't applaud when you serve their burrito. But it's so great to be in an industry or a position where people just applaud the morning announcements or whatever it happens to be. Enjoy the journey. Another part of the attitude is not thinking about when am I going to arrive, because you already have arrived. Every day that you do something, make any progress, any step forward, it's arriving at a new place, a new and better place. At some Q&A after a movie, some actor was asked, when did you know you had arrived? And he or she said, I haven't arrived. I still have so much more I want to do, because every level you get to, you want to do more. And then the actor followed up with, but then again, like I've always arrived. I've always been, for my first gig, I had arrived at a better a better place than I had been the week before. So look at it that way and enjoy what's happening every step of the way. No matter what, you go back to your high school reunion and this is your job, whatever it is in the industry, and you're going to be the coolest kid there. So not that everyone will act impressed, because you can't count on that at reunions, but it's still a lot better than what so many other people are doing. Okay, keep going here. With this attitude, doors will open for you. If you have a positive attitude and live in positive expectation rather than fear, doors just happen to open. I mean, a friend of mine called me just unexpectedly a few months ago and said, hey, do you want to work as a COVID safety guy on a TV show? It's something I'd never considered. And, for the next 6, 8, 9 months, I was getting a really decent salary and meeting new people and having a good time being on set. Another part of the attitude is to respect everyone. Don't have an ego. People who look down on others or treat everybody as if they're better, they may succeed for a little while, but it's not going to last forever, as you can see with many who have fallen, especially recently. Say yes to everything, like this COVID gig. Like I could have said, I have no interest in doing that. It's not along my career path. And yet it gave me connections to ABC and to ITV America and Comedy Central now that I didn't have 6 months ago. And just keep doing stuff. Producers produce. If you're talking about being a producer and you're not developing any projects, then you need to start doing something. And here's a lesson that I've learned that reads kind of weird, but it's just so counterintuitive, but it's true. Want what you don't want. And that means that when things happen that aren't what you wanted, they very often bring something unexpected and good. Something that a bad or an unwanted tasking from your boss may get you suddenly great exposure that you didn't anticipate, even though the task may have really been not fun. It may be the best thing for your career. When I first went into the Army, my first commander said to me, I'm giving you the worst platoon or the problem platoon. I'm like, But, if he had given me the best platoon, there would have been nowhere to go up. It could be, the best I could do was stay where I was. And in fact, what happened was things went well with that platoon, and it maybe looked a lot better than if I'd gotten the better platoon that I thought I wanted. So welcome whatever comes to you, good and bad, because it'll all be good. Confidence is the next big thing for producing. And this is something that, and I don't just mean showing confidence no matter what you feel, but I also mean feeling confident even if you have your doubts, because we all have doubts. So a big reason for this is that confidence inspires confidence in others. So if you are the leader, you're the producer, you're the director, whatever you happen to be, and you walk in one day when it's going to be really tough and you show confidence, everyone else will be going, well, yeah, I guess we can do that. For some reason, he thinks we can do it, or she thinks we can do it. I guess we can do it. But I've seen other days on set where it's been going to be an easy shoot and the director was frantic or producer and running around like a chicken with its head cut off. And, things just went crazy. So whatever the leader does is what everybody else will do. So show confidence, but also feel it, because you got to believe in yourself in this industry and in this job. And in every industry and every job, but in this one in particular, because that's what we're talking about today, but also because there's a lot of challenges here. So believe that it's going to happen, and don't worry about, is it going to happen this month? Is it going to happen next month? Don't put on a time limit, because it's going to work out. And that's real easy for me to say, but it takes reminders every single day. It takes practice of just being confident and just believing. So, we all have down days, and don't let it bother you. If you do, don't think, oh no, I feel bad. I guess there's something wrong with me, or I'm doing it wrong. It just means you have to practice more about believing and having confidence. You're the leader, so confidence is a big part of leadership. Everyone wants to see the leader being confident, and believe me, every leadership position I've been in, even the start of this COVID thing, I was like, I had no idea what I was doing, and people just wanted to see me say, okay, we've got this, and they wanted decisiveness. They wanted me to make decisions. The very first day, I knew nothing about COVID except a 7-hour training session the night before. And the executive in charge of the show said, okay, Brian, and he asked me questions, and most of them I could answer, but there were 2 or 3 I couldn't. And I just said, listen, I'll get back to you. I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. But someone came in a week ago with a bird on set, and she said, is it okay if I bring my pet bird, COVID wise? And I'm like, I had no idea. But I just said, yeah, it's fine to have your bird. As far as I'm concerned, you need to ask other people if you can have your bird on set. But I made the decision COVID wise. And then after she walked out, I Googled it and found out, yes, there's no great risk to that. But I had to make a decision right then, and I did. And part of it comes from having some technical competence. You can't just leave it to all the workers to know everything. You have to have some confidence to give you the confidence and the decisiveness that is needed, and then to allow you to communicate with strength, because that's what people want from a producer and a leader. Also, once you've hired people, once you've told them what to do, trust that they'll do it right, but also check on them. But part of confidence is being confident in the direction you've given the people you've hired. So next one is follow your heart. This is one of my favorites. Part of the reason it's my favorite is because when I first said it, I said, listen to your heart, not your brain. And my producing partner said, what? It was for a similar presentation, but she goes, no, you have to listen to your brain too. I said, okay, listen to your brain, but trust your heart, because your brain is smart, but your brain wants to protect you. It's more cautious, it's more prudent, and it'll lean towards no, because it wants you to survive. But your heart knows what you have to do to thrive, what you have to do to be happy. So your heart, if there's a conflict between your brain and your heart, take what your brain says into consideration, but go with your heart. Because you have to show passion for your projects so that everyone else will be passionate about it. So people will want to join in, people want to fund your project. You can't say, I want to do a vampire movie because everyone's doing a vampire movie, because they're popular today. They're popular now. Yeah, that's not gonna work. It has to be because I love vampire movies. My father was a vampire, or whatever it happens to be, that personal connection that you have to it, some reason that you're passionate, and communicate that passion to others. A guy called me up the other day, and he had some adventure, some action thriller, and I go, well, what is it that's different about this show? Why do you want to do this show? And he gave me the weakest reason. And I was like, yeah, that's not working for me. You really have to find what's driving you to tell this story. And another part of this is that what is unique about you is where you're going to succeed. And I don't know what that is. And I don't always know what it is about me. In fact, I looked back at my projects and saw that each of the protagonists were underdogs. And I thought, well, sure, we all root for underdogs, but that's not what all movies are about. Why am I driven to this or drawn to this? And I realized, when I was growing up, I was always the littlest kid in the class. And so rooting for an underdog kind of comes naturally to me in that sense. So maybe that's it. I don't know, but it is something that is what seems to be a recurring theme in my projects. And hopefully that's where I will succeed. Another big thing in our industry and in many industries, but certainly in entertainment, is that we have to work well with others, and collaboration is a big part of succeeding. Partners make perfect was the title of a LinkedIn article that I wrote, and the point of it is that you have to. There's a lot of work in producing, so if you have a partner, things will generally go better, and most most producers have producing partners that they work with over time. Not everyone, but most of them do. And part of that is because, like in the case of Penelope, whom you see there, we have complementary skills. She's more creative and I'm more business. We're both good in both of those areas, but she leans towards the creative and I lean towards the business, and that's how we split our work, and it goes very well. But we still double check each other and we still support each other on those areas. Networking is something that is hugely important in entertainment industry, and I'm alluding to the a rising tide raises all ships here with that wording, because I have lots of friends in the industry, and when I think of something that'll help someone else, I reach out to them and say, hey, here's something I saw that might benefit you. Last night I went with a walk with a friend, and in the hour and a half that we were walking, I probably gave her 6 things that were helpful to her. And I think there was one that she gave me back, and not that we're counting or anything like that, but in preparation for this, I thought back last night and I said, yeah, there were 1 or 2 things that I benefited out of the conversation, but together, it's, when she succeeds, she'll think of me too. And not that I'm doing it for my benefit, I'm doing it for her benefit, our mutual benefit. It's as long as you're genuinely trying to help out the other person, they'll genuinely try to help you out. None of us is the best at everything. My first film, the director also was the cinematographer, and he wasn't that good at it, as it turns out. And it was a decent film, but and we sold it, but it could have looked better. So for our second film, which I did with him too, I said, "Are you going to shoot it again?" And he says, "Yeah." And I go, "Who else would hire you to be the cinematographer?" And he goes, "No one." And I go, "Well, then why should we?" And I had someone in mind that would be great, and he was great. And once the 2 of them talked, everything went forward, and it really made the film much more of a success. So just realize you're not the best at everything. That's why we collaborate. Also look for people who are better than you. Some people, there's a saying that a venture capitalist named Guy Kawasaki attributes to Steve Jobs. It's A players hire A players, B players hire C players. And what that means is, if you're a great performer, you will hire other great performers because the final product will be better. If you're a mediocre, those people tend to hire people who are weaker than them, so they'll look better in comparison. You want to hire, don't worry about comparison, just worry about the final product, and that can only be the best it can if you hire the best people. All of us know more than all of us know. Hang on a second. My phone thinks I'm talking to it. Okay. All of us know more than one of us, because none of us knows everything. And then I think this is the 6th one. Keep learning. Yeah, I mean, this is before I became a producer. I spent 9 months researching the job. I read everything I possibly could. I went to workshops. I talked to mentors. And then I made the leap. But ever since then, I continue to learn. I go to every workshop, every conference that I can go to, and so on. So I have mentors. I have mentors through the Producers Guild, and just today we were emailing, and we're having a meeting next week. And I also have 2 mentees through the Producers Guild, and I learn from them just as they learn from me, because they have a different perspective than I do. They're younger, or they're from they're more junior to me, obviously, as producers, but I have forgotten some of that perspective, and so they remind me of it. I mentioned conferences and workshops. Watch movies and TV insatiably. Every time I try not to think about the technical parts while I'm watching, but afterwards I look back and I think, what was the story structure like? Why did I like that movie, or why didn't I like it? And I try to apply those lessons to my own work. Read everything you can about the industry. Talk to other producers or other people in the industry who are not producers, and just learn from everybody else. And go help other people on their project. If you're students right now, work on student films, or anybody can work on independent films in your local area. And just every time I work on a project for a friend, I meet new people, or I learn something else. And so, that's just one way to keep going. And this is just different random shots of me loving life as a producer, because it's a wonderful profession. I love it. I don't plan to ever retire. I can't imagine doing anything else, which doesn't mean it's for everyone, but that's why it's for me. And then finally, if any of you, wherever you are, whoever you are, ever have questions for me, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 10 years from now, reach out to me and I will do what I can to answer that or to help you out in whatever the situation is. So I'm going to provide this, Caitlin, to you, the presentation, and you can do whatever you want with it. Or actually, this is going to be on YouTube, so anybody can see it there. So I will now stop sharing.
Perfect. Well, here, I'm talking through a second monitor, so that way that it doesn't echo too badly. But thank you so much for the presentation. It was great. There was so much useful information in there. Does anyone have any questions real quick that they'd like to ask? Or anyone here in the room?
I have a question if no one else in the room has one. I'm just wondering, so people say often like it takes years to kind of break into this industry. And I'm wondering if there's, or like any creative industry really, and I'm wondering if there's things you kind of did along the way of your initial career. Obviously, like I'm similar to you in the military, but I know like people have first careers often before moving into the creative industry. And I'm wondering if there's anything you did during that career that enabled your transition into your job as or just into the creative industry in general.
In general, I'll say yes, even though specifically it's not exactly what you're asking, because I didn't know I was going to switch industries until I did. You know, it was kind of like I wasn't going to. Even while I was doing that 9 months of research on being a producer, I was expecting to do it part-time and keep my corporate gig. But had I known, and even after I knew, and I moved to LA eventually, what I did and what I recommend to everyone is just to reach out to everyone you possibly could ever want to meet and ask them for a meeting. And this friend of mine last night that I was walking with, I was talking to her about how when I first came to LA, every week I would write to 20 new people. And I would spend hours researching them, figuring out what their email address is, and then I wrote to them and asked for an informational meeting. I said, this is who I am and what I want to do, and here's why I'm writing to you specifically, because I didn't want to just make it a copy paste email because nobody wants to see that. So I said, like, you know, I love these films that you did, or whatever it happens to be. And then a month later, I would follow up with them if I didn't hear back, and a month after that. So I'd follow up twice, a total of 3 communications. And I would say a quarter to a third to 40%, somewhere in that range, said, yeah, come on in and let's have a meeting. And one of them was, I mean, these were A-list, you know, top executives or top producers. And one of them was the president of worldwide physical production at Warner Brothers. And he spent an hour and 45 minutes with me. And we're still in touch. And that's the other big thing is, you know, stay in touch with them. You know, don't go and have that one meeting and that's the end of the relationship. Or reverse that. And, you know, you may reach out to someone and just say, hey, congratulations on your Academy Award nomination, or congratulations on this film I just saw. I loved it. You guys are, you know, here's what I loved about it. You know, give them a little bit, show them you put some thought into these words and not just, I loved it. Even though that's good too. But, and then there are people that I have had relationships with that is just me writing to them, congratulating them on a film that they did. And they know me now only from that. And then maybe I might say, hey, can I get together with you just for some advice? And so it may be that the first thing you do is ask them for a meeting, or maybe down the road you ask them for a meeting. And maybe you never ask them for a meeting, because it's not all about, I'm planning to ask them a meeting in 3 years. It has to be genuine, sincerely saying, I really like that movie and I want to let them know. So that's a big part of it, is just that helps you build your network, and you can do that while you're in the Navy. And you can also reach out to, so that was just like people whose names I might know because I love this film, so I researched them. But there's also, in my case, Notre Dame people, or Army people, or in your case, Naval Academy people, or just Marines. There's a group that I'm also part of called Veterans in Media and Entertainment, which is I think 4,000 people across the country, but mainly in LA and I was gonna say New York, but maybe Atlanta has a bigger group, which is pretty close to where you are anyway. And it's just get in touch with them or your local. If you happen to live, like in South Bend, there's a group called Mid-America Filmmakers. It's not like they're making the next blockbuster, but they're out there making films, and they've been doing it for several years, or maybe they're just starting, whatever it is. So get involved with local groups wherever you happen to be, or other groups that connect you somehow to people in the industry. And then, of course, do the other things I mentioned, like watch everything and think about everything and read and all that stuff. And make films. If films is what we're talking about, go ahead and make them and get some experience and get some friends together, like Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney did way back when. Keely, you just jumped on.
Yes,
go ahead.
I've been here, but my camera hasn't on. I have a question. So I'm from San Diego and been auditioning for things since like 5th grade. So my mom and I would make the commute to LA back and forth, and then kind of put on pause for school to finish high school and college. And I've kind of had a plan to move back to LA after college. But more recently, I've just been like contemplating if it would be possible to not live in LA. Like, I'm interested in acting, but also writing and directing and maybe producing as well. My mom produces. So is it possible, just because I'm concerned with like the culture in LA, if you know what I mean? And like a lot of the projects I've auditioned for are projects that I wouldn't really want to be a part of. So do you have anything to shed light on that topic?
Well, I would say don't don't audition for things you don't want to be a part of. But I think you know that already because the way you said that. But so there's two parts to this question, and they're opposite answers. One of them is yes, you can do that, and you can be successful at it. And the more success you achieve, the less you have to be in LA. And particularly now after COVID, with so much, actually before COVID even, there's so many online or self-tapes, that you would just send in that, and now it's almost exclusively done that way. So auditioning is a lot easier now if you're not in LA. Not that it's easier than being in LA, it's just easier than it had been. The part that I said is the opposite, is that even though San Diego is only 2 hours away, well, depending on traffic, but anyway, only 2 hours away, there will be lots of things that you decide not to go to because you don't want to do the drive. So I live 50 miles east of downtown LA, and there are things that I don't go to that I wish I would go to because it's the only reason I was going to go in LA that day. Not so much as time went on, because as time went on, I just said, I'm going in. As time went on, I had more and more meetings throughout the day. So I would be in LA anyway, or Hollywood, whatever we want to call it. And then I'd stick around for a screening or for whatever event it is in the evening that I wouldn't have gone to if I was just out in Upland, which is where I live. So I am going to move in closer probably later this year because I don't want that to keep being an issue in my decision making. So it's just, maybe you make a rule that says I go into LA at least once a week or whatever number of times a month or whatever it happens to be, so that you don't let that be your excuse for not progressing. And I'm not saying that you wouldn't progress, but not your excuse for being lazy, I guess. And maybe that's too strong a word too, but I think you probably get what I'm trying to say. But you definitely can do it, particularly if you're a writer or director. Now, the other thing is, and the reason I'm talking about these events that you would skip, you're like, okay, so I don't go to the event, big deal, is because of the networking thing. So as a director, meeting producers, meeting actors is can be a big deal, because it's not a matter of how much talent you have or how well you've made a film, but it has to do with, can someone spend 2 months working with you every day? And that's why you want to meet people in person and spend 20 minutes talking to them or whatever. And Caitlin, I stepped on your toes by calling on Keely when I know that's your big thing.
Oh, no problem at all. Hey, the more this is a conversation, the better. So definitely no problem.
I'm expecting, almost requiring that Sydney ask a question since she recruited me here. But I can't enforce that. So
Gosh, putting me on the spot. I don't know.
it doesn't have to be right now. It could have been in 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll think on it.
And I should have sent you some questions to ask.
I know. Have me as a plant.
Well, I've got a question in the meantime while Sydney thinks. You mentioned kind of earlier on in the presentation about pitching your ideas to different companies. About how developed does an idea have to be for you to pitch it?
Well, I a year ago, I would have answered it differently. I would have said you have to have a screenplay, and it should be a screenplay that you've gotten to as best condition as possible. We go through at least a dozen rewrites on our scripts before we feel they're good enough to send out. But I say that I've changed my feeling on that because I guess I've been exposed now to more executives who just want to hear the idea and they will say, well, we've got a writer who can write that. But I guess I hesitate a little bit on that because, how do you identify, like, that's my idea? I mean, how do they write that contract? I don't know the answer to these questions. How do they say, okay, you'll be the producer, we're hiring you to produce this, to develop this? My phone is going crazy right now. It really thinks I'm talking to it. There must be something I'm saying that sounds like Bixby over and over again. And now it doesn't respond. Okay, so so it is possible, and I can't remember. So last night with my friend, I was talking to her about an idea I had for a Hallmark Christmas movie, and she talked about how they would give me a writer. Actually, she is a Hallmark writer, so she could do it, and she would benefit from it because she's been writing for Hallmark Canada. For whatever reason, her agent keeps on sending her to those gigs rather than Hallmark US, which is what she really wants to do, at least in the near term. And so having the writer is great, but we're just going to pitch them the idea. But we're not going to do any work on it until they pay us to produce this film, because it's going back to what you're passionate about. I think it's a cool story that I just happened to read in Reader's Digest, and but it's not something I want to spend years working on. No, if Hallmark wants to pay me or Lifetime wants to pay me, because I know somebody at Lifetime too, then I'll do it. Otherwise, forget it. I've got enough projects. I don't need to do this one about this Christmas story. So I guess that doesn't really answer, but in a sense, get it as developed as you can, and as you can for free, as you're willing to develop for free. And if that means writing the whole screenplay and going to a whole bunch of rewrites, then good. You're going to have a better shot. Better yet, if you can attach a director and an actor and producer, if you're not the producer. But if you just have this great idea and you know it's a killer idea and you think someone will buy it just as an idea, then reach out to those executives and say, I want to talk to you about an idea I have. I haven't written it, but I'm willing to get it. I'm willing to develop it for you, and see what they say.
Cool. So kind of following on to that, would a good way to break into the industry of producing be to sign up for one of those low, in the development stages, like before pitching as a producer, to kind of practice your skills?
So developing it with someone or through a production company or that you've pitched it to?
Oh, either. So I meant if someone is trying to pitch their idea, but they don't have money to put towards it in the beginning, volunteering to be a producer for them to gain experience that way.
It's, I hate to say it this way, but there's a little bit of difference between me going to Hallmark and saying I have this idea and a brand new producer going to Hallmark and saying I have this idea. So what I would recommend then is if you have this idea or a friend of yours has an idea and you want to be the producer of it, reach out to producers that maybe have done a couple films and have gotten them sold and have a little bit of clout that you can say, hey, we'll do all the work if you do all the connections, something like that, and it may not be that you have to do all the work. It may be that let's develop this together. We can't reach anybody with it, but if you're willing to do that part, then we'd love to partner on this. And of course, it has to be someone that you really think you can click with too, because it's going to be a several-year project to get it onto the screens. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have one question.
Oh, we got a question here. There. What's up?
Are you able to hear me, Brian?
Yep.
Alrighty, I'm Jake. I am a senior mechanical engineer here at Notre Dame. So I guess the question that I have for you, right, is you're talking about at the end there how, you never want to retire, right? You could do this for the rest of your life. And I guess, at this point, I'm young. I have a lot of energy and a lot of passion for themed entertainment design. And I could see myself having sort of that same mentality of, I never want to retire. But how do you sort of keep things fresh? Because I feel like right now in my life, I'm still kind of just constantly trying to find the next best thing, or like the next opportunity. Do you find yourself still like looking for that next opportunity in your work? Or do you kind of find like how do you sort of find the ability to keep that passion and drive without over consuming the opportunities, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that a couple things. One is that each project is going to probably give you more motivation because we're always in love with the project we have right in front of us right now. And I don't know what it's going to be like when I have made 10 films that have hit theaters, but right now it seems like every single one, once I finish this one and it's being released, that next one's going to be just as exciting, if not more exciting. Also, so that's part of it, but also there's so many avenues in the industry, like themed entertainment. Let's say this, I have a sci-fi film that I think would be great as a ride, I guess, in Disneyland, maybe, or Universal or whatever. And so you can take any project and say, what else can I do with that? Or where else besides in a movie theater would this project fit? I've never done a limited series. Maybe this could be a limited series, or maybe it could be an ongoing series because the characters are so appealing. Or what about VR and AR? I don't know what the difference is between those, so please don't ask. But there's going to be other stuff. Streaming, was never here before. Before it was here. But it seems like in the industry, there's always going to be something new, and it may be 10, 15 years in between, but I think it's maybe going to coincide with when you burn out on whatever you're doing. Or there's the thing where, okay, I've been a producer for 15 years, maybe now I want to be a studio executive, and I move into that. And by I mean, we don't know what other doors are going to open. And or maybe documentaries start appealing to you, or whatever it happens to be. So or reality, because just in October, a friend called me and said, "Hey, will you produce a series about my adventure race?" And he had been in Eco Challenge Fiji, and his team was the top American team, so he had some name recognition, and he knew the sport. And his particular race is the toughest race in North America, and it's just acknowledged as that, across the sport. So there were a lot of reasons why this was going to be a great project, and we actually pitched it to ABC because, as I mentioned, these shows, these COVID gigs gave me access to ABC. I mean, I got to know ABC executives who handle their unscripted films. So I wrote to them and said, "Hey, do you want to hear about this adventure race show we have?" And they wrote back in 18 minutes, said, "Yes, let's have a meeting." And so that was not something I ever planned to do. In fact, last week, my producing partner wrote to me and said, "Hey, ABC eventually passed on this a couple weeks ago, but there are two other companies that we are still talking with, not for this year, but for next year." And she said, "Hey, this isn't really what we've been always wanted to do. If it works out, great, but do you really want to keep, I don't have a passion for this show that I want to work on it for years." And I said, "You're right. That's a great wake-up call. We'll play these out as far as they go. If it happens, it happens. If not, we'll get back. We'll continue doing what we normally do, and we'll forget about this adventure or this docuseries thing." So my point there is that there's so many things you can do that I feel like you don't have to get tired. And I know a lot of people who were producers, became studio execs, did that for a while because it pays a hell of a lot of money, and then quit that at the president level and went back to being a producer because that's what they really love to do. So your career can take a lot of twists and turns, and each one of them can be fun and exciting. But I would say just don't worry about the path and just go along for the ride. There's this Taoist principle of just going with the flow. And it's like a leaf in a river, you know, it just takes you where it takes you. That leaf doesn't get to plan on where to go, and yet it has this fun ride down the river. I don't think the Taoist specifically said fun, but I added that.
All righty, thank you, Brian.
Cool.
All righty. Any more? Oh, did you think of one, Sydney?
I did.
She
I
Googled
apologize.
questions to ask.
Where
are you?
I'm at rehearsal for Jesus Christ Superstar right now.
Oh,
so
cool. Yeah.
I have a very
I saw that on
noisy
Facebook.
background. Oh, yeah. So I'm very excited for that. But I wanted to ask if there is a particular idea that you were really proud of, you're really excited for, that no one picked up, and you're still a little sad about it.
Well, I'm not sad about it because it's still going to happen. But my favorite project that I invented, and all of our projects except for one, we thought of on our own. The one, it was an exception because the writer that we've worked with the most often sent it to Penelope just to get notes on it, and she loved it. And it was a semi-finalist in the Academy's screenwriting competition. So it was really good already. And then we put them through another 15 rewrites and did some massive changes to it. But that's not the answer to your question. The answer to your question is about, I think it was 2015, I was accepted into this veterans writing project at the Writers Guild Foundation. And Allison, you have to look into that. Not ought to do what you want to do, but I suggest you look into that. And it's an annual project that runs year round, and it's you get mentoring and training from working professionals and some world-class speakers and stuff. And so in that year, I wrote an idea that had been percolating in my head for a few months about an asteroid that scientists capture as it passes Earth, and it ends up having creatures on it. And the creatures end up being a threat to all life on Earth, not because they were I was gonna say malignant. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, it starts with mal. They're bad, not because they're bad, but because innocently they just happen to exhale poisonous gas that is deadly to everything on Earth. And so malicious. Thank you, Caitlin. So these creatures that we snatched out of their peaceful existence and put on Earth, and now are now having a population explosion and are a threat to all life on Earth. What do they do with them without killing them? They don't want to just kill them off because that would just be immoral. But you can't let all life on Earth die either. So that's the way too long description of the film. And it was a quarterfinalist in one of the top 3 screenwriting competitions. It was selected for the Producers Guild's diversity workshop, which only 10 projects get selected for a year. We've kind of shopped it around a little bit, but it still needs a rewrite because Penelope's not happy with it yet. And but also one of the people in the diversity workshop who gave me a critique, Kathy Schulman, who's one of my producing heroes. I reached out to her a year or so ago and said, hey, can you take a look at this and give me notes back on it? And she just gave me scathing notes, which I love. You know, it's so valuable to get harsh criticism, because someone telling you, oh, it's great, and then not buying it is meaningless. You know, if it's so great, then take it and let's go with it together. So it needs a rerun. That's why I said I'm not disappointed, but it is my favorite project. I love the characters in it. I love writing because I got to spend time with those characters and just be with them for days on end. And I love it, and I have every intention to make that as probably our third or fourth film together.
Thank you for sharing.
Dilemma. Yeah, no problem.
That sounds great, and sounds like it would spark discussion. I would want to watch that.
Good.
I have one other question for you. I was wondering if you have a pet peeve or something that you notice when you're watching film and TV series now that you've had it from the producer's standpoint.
Okay, let me answer one from a writer's standpoint. I hate the line, "Let's do this," because I don't think it was in the lexicon until it came in that way from films and then repeated films over and over again. And it's just lazy writing. It's like, come up with another expression. You can do it just as well as whoever wrote that one. So I will never have "let's do this" in my film unless it's a spoof use of the phrase. But exposition is something that annoys me when they just talk to each other and give each other the backstory, because nobody talks that way. They probably already knew the backstory. They don't have to explain it to each other. Sometimes it's necessary, but when it is necessary, you have to disguise it somehow or distract the reader, the viewer, I'm sorry. Also things that don't go anywhere. A good example, even though I guess it's justified, was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The whole Margot Robbie storyline went nowhere, except that we all know Sharon Tate got killed, and so that was kind of a distraction for us. But it was a big distraction. Like, it went on, and it was like a major storyline that had nothing to do with everything else. So that's that kind of, like, he could have woven that into the rest of it, and it would have been justified. But as it was, and I'm not saying Tarantino is not good and successful and everything, but it just could have been. He could have, I thought, done that a little more creatively.
Great answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. I feel like, and I don't want to, not hate, I like putting people on the spot. Riley has just been there the whole time, and I feel like he's got something, but no pressure. And for some reason, you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Do you know how to sign language? Okay, I hear somebody now. Go ahead and speak, and maybe we hear you now. No. Oh, well. Here's a good shot. What gives you inspiration? Where do you get inspiration for your films? Oh, wow. I wish I knew. You know how when you're taking a shower and ideas come to you? Well, let me be more specific. Okay, so the sci-fi film came from two stories I heard on NPR, probably on Science Friday. One was about capturing an asteroid. One was about these little creatures called tardigrades or water bears that can withstand conditions far beyond what exists on Earth. So people think, oh, maybe they came from somewhere else. So that's what if an asteroid came and had creatures on it? And that's where that started. And then in this veterans writing project program, one of my mentors said, I had already decided to make the main character a woman after I'd initially made it a man. So when I made it a woman, she said, you need to give her a best friend or a sister or something like that. And that ended up being the heart of the story, the relationship between these two sisters. So that's the one. We have a military film. It's a true story of a Black Green Beret in Afghanistan. And it's a guy I worked with when I was in Afghanistan, and he was awarded a Silver Star for this particular battle. And he told the story to us one day. And a few years later, I had just met with Peter Berg, who produced and directed Lone Survivor. And I was driving home, I was thinking, I wish I had a project I could pitch to him. I should have had that thought before going to the meeting, but instead I had it on the way home. And then I thought, oh, how about that one with Steph? He fought single-handedly. He survived single-handedly against the greatest number of enemy combatants than anyone since Audie Murphy in World War II. And I mean, I don't know why there's not a line of financiers outside the door right now. Well, they're not allowed in because of COVID, but ready to fund this movie. But it's going to happen, and I know it'll happen. It's going to happen, fairly soon. It's being read right now by some very big people. Skydance read it and never responded to us, but now I know from Amazon that I can go back to them and pitch it to someone else. I'm going to do that with Amazon again too. So, and then there's a memoir that I read that I loved. It made me laugh and cry, and I was afraid. And so I wrote to the author and I said, I want to produce this as a film. And then there was the one that writer sent to us that Penelope loved, and Penelope has one that she wrote that was inspired by events in her youth. So they come from, there's another one that I want to do. I was talking to my friend I was walking with last night that is about my parents when they eloped to Cuba to get married. And that night, Castro took over the country and they were stuck in Cuba and nobody knew they were there. They had their plane tickets were no longer good. And they had to go to the consulate and get on a boat out of the country. So, you know, ideas are all around us. And here's the thing though, if we come up with an idea and we're really excited about it, and then 2 months, 3 months, 6 months later, we don't even care about it anymore, then we don't do it. But if it's something that sticks with us for months and years, well, we don't wait years, but if it sticks with us for months, then we'll start developing it. Yeah, Ben. Yeah, is that good enough?
I think, yeah, he's typing. Very cool. Well, we're right about at 9 o'clock. So unless anyone has any last minute quick questions.
And don't be shy because I can stay as long as anyone needs. If it's just two of us left talking.
I do have a quick question. I'm sorry to be the one to kind of bring it over.
No,
you
you're not.
have like a ton of mentoring stuff and, you know, kind of like reaching back to places you've been, just stuff you're involved in. I'm wondering, you know, like people often are like, you know, look for a mentor or whatever. And I'm wondering, as a mentor, what do you feel is the best thing that you do for the people you mentor? That kind of not necessarily just in the creative industry, just in general, like what do you feel that allows them to move to that next level?
You know what? No, I have never thought of this. I'm just gonna, but this is gonna be the truth. I may think of a better answer tomorrow, but what came to my mind immediately was getting people to understand that they are just as worthy of consideration for the project or for a meeting or for a date, you know, if it's in your personal life, but as anyone else is, you know. So, we talked earlier about I can't remember which question it was, but about when I said, you know, I can say that as a producer, you know, Producers Guild member, maybe I get better consideration, but that doesn't mean that you as a first-time producer aren't also deserving based on the fact that you're smart, you're motivated, you have a great idea, you know, whatever it is, you still have all the elements except for the years of experience. So go do it, you know. Just my friend Amy last night, who I walked with, she's like, how do you get meetings with, you know, you don't have an agent, how do you get these pitch meetings? And I said, I don't know, I just ask, and they do it. They say yes. Not all of them say yes, but a lot of them did. Another thing is that I look for things that, and this is just in response to her question. She goes, how do you get to do all these workshops with the Producers Guild? And I said, well, I just think about a workshop I want to attend that doesn't exist yet, and I propose it, and they say, go ahead and do it. And so that's kind of related in that, you know, it's just believing that you can do it as well as anyone else. When I was looking at this military film, I was thinking nobody's going to let me, who's done 4 films, each of, you know, in total they're under $1 million. No one's going to give me $30 million to make this military film. Maybe I have to partner with someone like Peter Berg to get it done, even as an executive producer, just so he's on board. And I happened to do a roundtable with Grant Heslov, who is George Clooney's producing partner. And I said that to him. And I tell you, I happened to do this roundtable. I organized and moderated the roundtable because I decided I could. And I reached out to him and he said, sure. And the Producers Guild said, yeah. And anyway, so in that roundtable, there was time enough for me to ask a question too. As a moderator, I don't always do that, and I said this to him. I said, do I need to partner with a more experienced producer to get a $10 million or $30 million film funded? And he said, no, you know exactly. It's the same stuff you did on your small films. You just have more money to spend. So you know how to do this. You don't need to partner with anyone. And as it turns out, as I've been pitching to people, no one has ever said, well, you don't have enough experience. We're not going to give you the money. But if you partner with someone else, then yeah. Now, if they do say that eventually, then sure, we'll do it. You know, but it's like I was a mentee for a moment there with Grant, and he just like made the light bulb go off over my head. We're like, you can do this, you know, and you're just as worthy as I am. And maybe he was just saying, you know, maybe he was just saying that so I wouldn't ask him to produce it with me. but no, it wasn't like that at all. So yeah, I guess so. The answer back in short was, yeah, everyone is worthy. You're welcome. Anybody else? Nope.
I think we're all good. Thank you so much for joining us. It was such great information and such a good time.
It was for me too, and thank you very much for having me.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.